Hello, welcome to the CIDDL Research and Practice Briefs. My name is Nicholas Hoekstra. The purpose of the CIDDL Research and Practice Briefs are to have conversations around innovative uses of technology in special education, early childhood education, related services, and leadership personnel preparation programs. So, today we have Dr. Louis Lord Nelson, author, UDL consultant, and host of the popular podcast UDL in 15 Minutes, as our guest expert to share with us some of her work around UDL and the use of podcasts. So welcome. Do you mind if I call you Louis?
Oh, that's fine. That's perfect.
Okay. So welcome, Louis. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you.
So to start with, can you tell us a little bit about your work around UDL and how it can be used kind of in teacher preparation, and what are some of the issues that you're trying to address with UDL?
Sure. So my work within the realm of universal design for learning has pretty much been in every corner. And so that's everything from working as the UDL coordinator within the Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation, where I worked with over 700 teachers and helping them implement it. And then working when I was at CAST for my postdoc and helping them with professional learning, so designing that. And we predominantly worked with teachers in the field during that time. But through that experience and my experience in Columbus, Indiana, that led me to author a book, Design and Deliver, Planning and Teaching Using Universal Design for Learning. And that book and the supports that I provide to that book are used in a significant number of teacher training programs across both the United States and then, well, I shouldn't say both, but also other locations internationally. So that's a huge honor. So I know that that voice is used there, and the influence of educators with whom I've worked and their voice being in that book is influencing. So I would say that when it comes to what I'm trying to achieve, my background is in special education. I was a special education teacher. And when I was in graduate school there at KU, Rock Top Jayhawk, I always knew that I wanted whatever my work to be to actually influence general educators in their inclusion of students with disabilities, but then also seeing inclusion more broadly and understanding that we have students of need that don't necessarily have some sort of a label. And Universal Design for Learning provided me that space and that framework. And so I latched on really quickly. And that's my voice that I bring to the table. And it doesn't matter if I'm working with educators in low resource areas. So for example, work I've done in Uganda and Malawi, or if I'm working in high resource areas that are here maybe across the US or in Singapore or throughout Europe, the voice is still the same. What I'm promoting is still the same, is that this framework is about inclusion. It is about ensuring that every single learner is gaining access to and having the opportunity to grow toward becoming expert learners.
Excellent. That's super important. When you were working with, a large number of teachers, for example, at the Bartholomew School District, what were some of the technologies that you used, and what were some of the ways that you managed to provide support and training to such a large number of teachers across a wide school district?
Yeah, there's a lot of different directions that I went. So right off the bat, I met with every principal in their 17 different buildings and found out what they had already been doing, what they felt was going well, where they felt the gaps were, and what their plan was for their building. Not only just in the realm of universal design for learning, but kind of what they were seeing building wide within other areas, because of course, part of my job was to help them see how UDL was the umbrella over everything, because that district, that's what they use as their guiding framework. And then from there, it was working directly with teachers or department chairs and getting their voice of what did they see going on and where did they see the gaps and where did they see the successes, and sometimes that aligned, sometimes that didn't. And then from there, it was creating trainings that were specific to that building, to that department, to those teacher needs. Sometimes I was in individual classrooms and leading a lesson, modeling. Sometimes I was doing brown bag lunches. The technology use, so I did a little weekly blurb that essentially, like in the newspaper world, for those who aren't old enough, it's always important to have your information above the fold. That was always a big deal, to have your byline above the fold.
Yep.
And so I would always send email tips and tricks, what have you, that would be short enough that if they open their email in just that preview view, that they would see the whole thing.
Yep.
And then, as the district has always been very key in how they're utilizing their technology in their classrooms as instructional pieces, as they're part of instruction. They don't lead or guide, or they don't lead the instruction. They're a part of enhancing the instruction. So that was so helpful. And working with those who specialize in that area, and ensuring that our voices were the same, the message was similar. So that's just kind of a scattering, but that gives maybe a guide of how we did these things.
I think that's an important message, that the technology was there to enhance and to support, but not to lead the instruction. I think that's a great kind of takeaway message. And this dovetails very nicely into the next question that I want to ask you. Speaking of the byline above the fold, you're the host of a podcast called UDL in 15 minutes, which is a podcast that typically is around 15 minutes, a nice short piece of media. Can you tell us a little bit? Can you tell us a little bit more about your podcast and how your podcast and similar kind of the podcasting art can be used within teacher support and teacher preparation?
Sure. So I'll back up just a touch and talk about the design of the podcast, because typically when you hear podcasts, we all think just the audio part. But I knew immediately, as the idea formed in my head, that I needed it to be accessible for everyone. And so along with the podcast, the audio is also partnered with what I call a photo montage. So photos are sent in by my guests, and I create a YouTube clip that is the same audio as the podcast, but then there's the description with the pictures used. And then on top of that, I do another YouTube video that has audio descriptions, because although someone might have low or no vision, they want to also participate and enjoy whatever those pictures are that are going along with the podcast. So I provide that also. There's also a transcript of every episode provided. And then I also do an associated blog, which dives into some aspect of that podcast. So it takes it a little bit of a different, a new direction. So when it comes to why I was driven to do the podcast, it would be for both educators in the field and the pre-service. We hear the question all the time, what does UDL look like? And I think when people ask that question, of course, what they're asking is, what are the experiences? What can I anticipate my experiences to be? And so I really wanted to create a podcast that provided that space for educators implementing UDL to share their experiences. What's a nugget out of their lives that they would like to share that would help others see what UDL looks like in action? So that was the driving force, and that's the design. And I do know that the podcast is used in, again, a lot of pre-service programs, just because I get follow-up emails from both students in the field and then the professors. I've created guides for questions for either podcast clubs, so instead of book club, podcast club. And then I've enhanced some of those questions as professors have said, well, we're working on this. Could you help me craft some questions help my pre-service teachers really think more deeply about these issues. And so I've worked with those folks too. I'm excited when I hear that pre-service teachers are hearing these podcasts, because I think it's another avenue to them understanding what it's like to walk into the classroom the first time, and what it takes to design, really to design.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a little slice of reality, a little slice of the lives that they're going to be walking into.
Yes.
This is perhaps a bit of an obvious question, but what opportunities do you think Universal Design for Learning has in improving special education, early childhood education, and related service personnel preparation, as well as leadership personnel preparation?
Absolutely. So the framework, when there's a quality understanding of all that's involved in the framework, it can help shift mindsets. And it's that mindset shift that we need to have to establish these truly inclusive environments. I really do believe that. Rarely is it resources that are getting in the way. And I strongly stand behind that, because again, I've worked with educators in extremely low resource environments. But when students are fully included, it has more to do with that mindset, from where those teachers and those administrators are coming, how they're designing those environments. And then when I talk about that depth of information or depth of knowledge, there's the graphic organizer that we all know that has the principles and guidelines, the checkpoints, and the pictures of the brain, and the executive learner, the expert learner indicators. But for people to really understand what variability means, for them to really understand what accessibility and flexibility and choice and rigor and goals, those are such key underlying components of this framework. And when educators, be it in the classroom or administrators or supporting, have a deep understanding of those pieces and seeing where they fit and how they should be used in a very intertwined way, then the experience of designing and the experience of implementing is just enhanced. It improves greatly. The danger that I see is when people learn just parts, like they just learn the graphic organizer. Or I'm around folks who can talk real well, but then I'm in their setting and I'm like, yeah, you don't really get it because of that mindset.
I see. I guess, so one kind of follow-up final question here. How do you think UDL can support positively the use of technology?
Oh, yeah. So again, when people really understand the design of the framework and they understand what it's promoting that they will do in their design, then how you're going to use your technology and why you're going to use your technology changes. So earlier, like I said, and then you pointed out that the technology isn't the driver, right? It's to use, to enhance, to improve, to create that level of accessibility that's necessary. But if the technology is the guiding tool, and that's what's pushing along what's going to happen in that classroom, then you're not going to have the deep learning.
Right.
But when you have something that's helping us understand, oh, I should be thinking about how this is helping our students engage with the learning and how it's going to represent that information to them and how they can use that to really show what they know and help them really move through their executive functioning better, right? Then that technology is a useful piece. When I think about all of our learners, and I'm not going to get our percentage right, but I know that our speech and language associations have let us know that there are probably over 50% of our kids who have communication needs don't have a communication device in our country, right? And so if you've got people who really are invested in and understand universal design for learning, that their quest to help those students really express who they are and express their knowledge and express what they can do then they're going to turn and look for those devices. They're going to look to find how those students can be better included within their environment, rather than having that hole and just saying, well, they're not able to participate because X, Y, Z. Yeah.
Technology as a bridge to some more of the engagement, to expression, to getting the kids actively participating in the learning.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, in closing, do you have any resources or tools that for those that would like to learn more about your work?
Sure. Well, I would love it for more people to come and hear UDL in 15 minutes, and I know my guests would really appreciate that too. So you can find all those episodes at my website, which is udlapproach.com.
And we'll provide a link to that in our publication. Great.
Thank you very much. And there's like over 64 of them now. And as I said, there's also the associated blogs. And so that's an additional level of information. And those blogs are always filled with links out to other pieces of associated information. So you can keep going down that happy little rabbit hole as much as you'd like to. I do know that there are still folks in the field that are, what's the research behind all of this? Well, I have another podcast called UDL Research in 15 minutes, where I interview researchers. And that's just starting off, but it's been a great joy. And in fact, one that's going to come out here really soon is talking about the needs of students who have experienced chemotherapy and how that affects their learning, and how UDL could be used and should be used to create inclusive environments. And so getting people to think outside of maybe just kind of where they sit, but then also helping them understand the research that is behind this. So my quest is to get through all of it, and that's going to take me like 16 years. So that's okay. It'll go forever.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Louie, for sharing your time with us today and discussing with us your work around UDL and your podcasts. We appreciate your time. For more information about CIDDL research and practice briefs and other resources for higher education and related services, please go to CIDDL.org. Don't forget to follow us on social media, subscribe to our channel, and leave us a message. All right. Thank you all very much for joining us.